Imagine you're driving home late at night. The roads are empty, you check your mirrors, you signal every turn, you're not speeding, then you see it. Flashing blue lights in your rear view. Your heart jumps. You pull over immediately because that's what good drivers do, right? But here's the question almost nobody asks. Did you just hand the police more power than the law actually gives them? That single instinctive decision to stop exactly where you are might be the one mistake that changes everything. And most drivers make it every single day without even realizing. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to learn isn't taught in any driving school. It's not in the DMV handbook. And yet it could be the difference between a warning and a search, between driving home and leaving in handcuffs. By the end of this video, you'll see a routine traffic stop in a completely different way. But first, let me tell you about a man named Michael who learned this lesson the hard way. Michael was driving on a quiet highway in Virginia just after midnight. He saw the police cruiser behind him and did exactly what you'd expect. He signaled, slowed down, and pulled onto the shoulder. That shoulder was dark. It was narrow, and it was completely legal for him to stop there. But that exact choice, stopping on that specific stretch of road, triggered something Michael never saw coming. The officer approached, asked for license and registration. Everything seemed normal. Then the officer asked Michael to step out of the vehicle. And here's where most people freeze. They think, I have to obey, right? He's a cop. But the truth is far more complicated, and that complication is exactly what police training manuals don't want you to know. Here's the reality that changes everything. The moment you choose where to stop, you're also choosing the legal rules that apply to that stop. Most people believe that when those lights come on, you must stop immediately wherever you are. That is not completely accurate. In fact, in most states across the US and under UK law as well, you are legally allowed to continue driving for a reasonable distance to reach a safe, well-lit public area. Think a gas station, a busy parking lot, anywhere with witnesses and lights. But almost nobody does this. Why? Because fear takes over. And that fear, that perfectly natural fear, is exactly what gives police expanded authority. Because when you stop on a dark, isolated stretch of road, the officer can legally claim safety concerns. And once officer safety is on the table, a huge range of new powers suddenly become available. They can order you out of the car. They can pat you down. They can shine flashlights into your windows. They can even bring a drug dog to circle your vehicle. But stop at a well-lit gas station with security cameras rolling and witnesses nearby. The entire dynamic shifts. Now, any escalation by the officer is visible. Any overreach is recorded, and the officer knows it. This isn't theory. This is strategy. And the people who know this secret rarely talk about it. Let me give you a real-world example. In the United States, a landmark case called Pennsylvania versus Mims established that police can order a driver out of a vehicle during a traffic stop because of officer safety. That case is real. It's precedent. But what most people don't realize is that the justification for that power depends heavily on the circumstances of the stop. If you are stopped on a dark, empty road with no one around, the officer's safety claim is strong. If you are stopped in front of a 24-hour diner with people eating dinner 10 feet away, that claim becomes much weaker. But here's where it gets strange. The police are not required to tell you that you can choose a safer location. In fact, many officers are trained to interpret any delay in stopping as suspicious behavior. So you have this incredible tension. You want to be safe. You want to protect your rights, but you also don't want to escalate the situation. So what do you actually do? This is the part that changes everything for you. And it's so simple that you'll wonder why nobody told you before. When you see the lights, do not panic. Turn on your hazard lights immediately. That single action signals to the officer that you see them and that you intend to comply. Then slow down gradually. Do not suddenly brake. Do not make abrupt turns. Signal your intention to pull over, but instead of stopping on the shoulder, continue driving at a reduced speed to the nearest well-lit public area, a gas station, a convenience store, a hospital parking lot, anywhere with lights and people. Now listen carefully, because this is the part most lawyers won't say out loud. You are allowed to do this. In the United States, courts have repeatedly upheld that drivers may proceed to a safe location as long as they do so without unreasonable delay. In the UK, the same principle applies under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. You are not fleeing. You are not evading. You are simply ensuring safety for yourself and the officer. But here's the catch, and this is a big one. You must do this calmly. You must not drive aggressively. You must not ignore the lights. And when you finally stop, you should stop in a spot that is clearly visible, well lit, and ideally within view of security cameras. Then turn off your engine. Keep your hands on the wheel, and wait. Almost nobody talks about this part, but security cameras are your best friend in a traffic stop. If that gas station has cameras, those cameras are recording everything, every word, every gesture, every single thing the officer does. And that recording is evidence that can protect you if anything goes wrong. evidence that can contradict an officer's report, evidence that most drivers never think to create for themselves. Let me pause here for a second and ask you something. Have you ever been pulled over in a place that felt unsafe? A dark road, a blind corner, a narrow bridge? If you have, you already know that feeling in your chest, that quiet fear. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you were pulled over, because I promise you, you are not alone. And this is exactly why understanding this simple mistake matters so much. Now let me take you deeper, because the mistake doesn't end with where you stop. It actually gets much bigger. And this next part is going to surprise you. Once you have stopped, the officer will approach. They will ask for your license and registration. And here's where the second simple mistake happens. Most drivers immediately start talking. They explain where they're going. They apologize. They volunteer information. And every single word you say can and will be used to build probable cause. This is not a movie line. This is the Fifth Amendment in action. You have the absolute right to remain silent. But almost nobody actually uses it. Why? Because silence feels rude. Silence feels suspicious. Silence feels like you're hiding something. But silence is not suspicious. Silence is a constitutional right. And when you understand that, everything changes. Here's what a lawyer will tell you. And here's what police officers learn in training. When someone remains silent and simply says, "I do not consent to any searches and I would like to speak to an attorney," that person is almost always harder to charge. Why? Because they haven't given the officer any statements to use against them. They haven't admitted to speeding. They haven't admitted to being lost. They haven't admitted to anything. And without those statements, the officer's case is much weaker. But here's where the psychological game comes into play. Officers are trained to break silence. They'll ask simple questions. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Do you know why I pulled you over? These seem innocent. They seem conversational, but they are evidence gathering. And every answer you give is voluntary. You are not legally required to answer any of those questions. Not one. Let me say that again because it's that important. You are not legally required to tell a police officer where you're coming from, where you're going, or what you're doing. You are required to provide your license, registration, and proof of insurance. That's it. Everything else is optional. But most drivers don't know that. And the system is designed to keep it that way. This changes everything, doesn't it? Now let me tie this all together with a real-world scenario that actually happened. A driver in Texas was pulled over late at night on a deserted farm road. He panicked, stopped immediately on the gravel shoulder, and within minutes the officer claimed to smell marijuana. The driver had never used marijuana in his life, but that claim was enough. The officer searched the car, found nothing, but the driver was detained for 45 minutes while they brought a dog. The dog alerted on nothing. The driver was released with no charge, but his night was ruined. His rights were violated, and he had no camera footage because there were no cameras on that dark road. Now imagine the same driver had turned on his hazards, driven 2 more minutes to the 24-hour truck stop, and stopped under the bright lights. The officer approaches. The driver says nothing except providing his documents. The officer claims to smell marijuana, but this time the truck stop's security cameras are recording. And the driver calmly says, "I do not consent to a search." The officer knows that without consent, without probable cause beyond his own statement, any search is risky. Any evidence found could be thrown out. The dynamic has completely flipped. That is the power of understanding this one simple driving mistake. Not stopping immediately, not answering questions, not consenting to searches. These are not aggressive acts. These are not confrontational. These are simply you exercising your rights. And rights that are not exercised are rights that disappear. Now let me bring this home for you because this is where most videos would end, but I want to leave you with something deeper. The relationship between drivers and police is built on thousands of tiny interactions every single day. Most of those interactions are fine, professional, respectful, but some are not. And the difference between a fine interaction and a life-changing one often comes down to one thing: who controls the environment. When you stop on a dark road, the officer controls everything. When you stop under bright lights with cameras rolling, you share that control. That doesn't make you difficult. That doesn't make you guilty. That makes you smart. So here's what I want you to remember. Next time you see those lights in your mirror, don't let fear make the decision for you. Turn on your hazards. Slow down. Drive calmly to a safe, well-lit public place. Stop. Turn off the engine. Keep your hands visible. Provide your documents. And then politely, respectfully say nothing else. You are not being rude. You are not being suspicious. You are simply protecting yourself the way the law actually allows you to. And if this information made you see traffic stops differently, if you learned something today that no one ever told you before, then do me one favor. Share this video with someone you care about, because most people will go their entire lives without knowing this. And that one simple driving mistake could cost them far more than a ticket. Before you go, let me ask you one final question. Now that you know this, will you change where you pull over next time? Comment below, yes or no, and tell me why. I read every single response. Thanks for watching. Stay aware, stay calm, and know your rights.